In this lesson, we're going to work on converting the product PSD file to HTML and CSS. But before we get too far into the product PSD to HTML conversion, I want to make a small change to our category product styling. If we take a look at our category page in the browser, and we scroll down here to the product listings, you can see on the right side that we have this little bit of extra space, and it's bugging me. So I should have added this in the last lesson, but that's just how it goes while doing these conversions. After you've had time to reflect, you can always see something else that you want to change. So let's switch into our text editor and fix this up. Let's open up our main.css file, and let's scroll down to our product styles for the product class. It's pretty far down here. And so right here in the listings product class rules, let's add some margin to the right of each product. So we'll set the margin right to 100 pixels. And there we go. That looks much better. It's now filling the entire main content area. All right, let's now open up our product PSD into Photoshop. And here we get our usual message about missing fonts. We'll just hit OK. And we can go up to type and we'll choose replace all missing fonts. Now I'm just going to zoom in a bit here so we can see the design closer up. All right, now this design has a lot of additional elements that we won't be using in the final Laravel e-commerce application. First, we're not going to be using these breadcrumbs, and our products are only going to have one image, so we won't have the multiple other thumbnails. We also won't have the star rating system, as I've talked about before, and we won't have both a short and long description. We're just going to have one main product description only. We also aren't going to have product reviews, and at the bottom here, we won't be showing related products. So we're only going to have to worry about creating this very top section. All right, to get started, let's first get this large main product image from our design. So we'll choose our Move tool, we'll click the image, and then we can right-click the layer, and let's duplicate this into a new document. Then we can Command-click the layer preview icon there. We'll choose our Crop tool, and we'll hit Enter twice to confirm the crop. And let's save this out. Now, I've already saved this in advance, but I chose to save it as a PNG 24 and just hit save. And you can see that I've named this main-product.png. So go ahead and save that. I'm just going to cancel out of these. Let's now get started on our HTML. We'll switch into our text editor. Let's open up our category.html file. We'll select all of our code here and copy it. And we're just going to use this as a starting point for our product page. So let's close it out and let's create a new file. We'll paste in our code and let's save this. And we'll save it as product.html. And we want this to go into the root of our ecom PSD to HTML folder. So let's save it there. And let's scroll up to the top. The first thing we'll do is change the title. Let's change this to say product. Then we'll scroll down a bit as we need to get rid of a little bit of code. So right after our header, let's delete the promo alt section as we don't need that. But let's make sure to add in a horizontal rule so that we can separate the main content from the header. Then inside of the main content section, we're just going to get rid of everything. So all of the products and the headings, we'll just delete these out of here. There we go. So now our main content is completely empty. Make sure to keep that clearfix class as we do need that. And then after the main content, let's get rid of the pagination section and that top HR, but we'll keep this bottom one here to separate it from the footer. And now we're ready to get started. So let's take a look at our design real quick. And you can see that we have three different areas here. We have the product image on the left, then we have the product details in the middle, and then on the right we have the product information with the price and availability. So let's go ahead and create those divs. Let's go back into our text editor, and inside of our main content section, let's create a div with an ID of product image. Then we'll create another div with an ID of product details. And we'll create a third div with an ID of product info. And I used hyphens in between those words, so that's product-info. Let's expand this, and let's work on the product image first. Let's put a comment here saying end product image. And all we need to do is create an image tag, and this will display our main product.png file that we saved out earlier. And let's set the alt text to say product. So that's it for the product image div. Let's go back into our design. Now let's do the product details here. So we're going to need a heading. We're going to need the product description. We'll need this horizontal rule, and we're going to need a form with a button and a link for the add to wish list. Let's go back into our text editor, and let's put a comment here for the end of the product details section, or div, I should say. And inside of this div, let's create our h1 heading, plus we need a paragraph, then we need our form, and then we need another paragraph with a link in it for the wish list. So let's expand this out. So let's start with the header and the paragraph for the description. So it just says this is the product title, and then some lorem ipsum text. So let's set the title. This is the product title. And down here in the paragraph, I have a snippet called lorem, and that'll fill in my paragraph with the lorem ipsum placeholder text. Now, after the description, we need this horizontal rule. So let's add that in. Let's put an HR tag here. And then for our form, we'll just have this submit to a hash for now, and we'll set the method to post. And let's take a look at what we need for the form. So we're not going to do the configuration drop-down menu, but we will add in the quantity and the button. So we're going to need a label and an input field, and then our button. Let's go back into our text editor, and let's create a label. And this is going to be for a quantity field. And we'll just set the text as quantity, and let's close the label. Now let's create the input field for the quantity. We'll set its type to text. We'll give it an ID of quantity for the label. We'll give it a name of quantity. We'll give it a default value of 1, and we'll set the max length attribute to 2 so that they can't enter like 300 products. They can only go up to 99. And now we need to create our add to cart button. So let's use the button tag. We'll give this a type of submit, and I'm going to give this a class of secondary-cart-btn. And let's close our button tag. And now if we look at the button here, we have our little white cart icon showing up in there. So let's put that inside of here. We'll create an image tag. We'll set the source to image/whitecart.gif. We'll set the alt text to be add to cart. And now we just need to put in the text add to cart in all caps. So after the image, we'll put add to cart, and I'll put a space here so that it's separate from the image. And that's it for the form. Let's now work on the add to wish list link. So I'm just going to fix up the formatting here a little bit. And this is going to link to a hash symbol. And we first need to display our little blue check, the wish icon that we have. So let's create an image. We'll set the source to wish.gif. We'll set the alt to add to wish list. And then the text of the link will just be add to wish list. And that's it for the product details. Let's now work on the HTML for the product info on the right side here. So we'll just need a couple of paragraphs for this, And I noticed before we replaced the fonts that some of this was bolded. So we'll make sure to use some span tags to separate the text so we can add in that boldness. Let's switch into our text editor and let's fill in the product info div. I'll first put a comment here saying end product info. So let's just create a few paragraph tags for the price, the availability, and the product code. The first paragraph is going to be for the price, so we'll make sure that it has a price class. And then we just need 2 additional paragraphs, and both of those should have a span tag in them. So let's expand that. And the first one is just going to display a price, so we can put $1,099 in there. Then the second one is just the availability. So the first part will be availability, and then inside of the span we'll put in stock. And then the last one is the product code of 32321. So we'll put product code on the outside and then 32321 inside of the span. And that's it for the HTML. Let's now work on our CSS. So the first thing we need to do is to float all of these to the left so that they line up horizontally. Let's go back into our text editor and let's go into our main.css file. And let's scroll down here past our pagination right before our footer. And let's create a new comment here. So this is styling for the product page. And we want to float all 3 of our sections, or divs. So we want to float the product image, the product details, and the product info. So we can target all 3 of those: product image, product details, and product info. And let's set the float to left. And let's also add a little bit of margin. So we'll push them away from the top horizontal rule. We'll just add 20 pixels to the top and bottom and 0 on the left and right. So let's switch to the browser and take a look at the HTML that we've coded and this first little bit of styling. So we want to go to the product.html page. There we go. We can see our image, our title, our description, our horizontal rule, and our form with our wish list, and then the product information. So it is floating left, there's just not enough room to display it yet. So we'll have to change these divs width in order to allow enough room for them all to float on the same line. So let's go back into our text editor and let's target the product image div first. And let's set its width to 45%. And then we can target the product details div and we'll set its width to 30%. And then we'll target the product info div and we'll set its width to 20%. Let's take a look at what that looks like. We'll refresh the browser. There we go. It's all lining up properly now. Now let's work on styling the header and the description. So if we look at the design in Photoshop, we need to just have a little bit of space between them here. Let's go back into our text editor and let's style that H1 heading first. So we target the product details ID and then H1 headings. And let's change the font size to 22 pixels. And we'll set a bottom margin of 40 pixels. Let's see what that's done. We'll refresh the page. There we go. That looks better. Now we need to style our form. Let's go back into our text editor and let's target the product details ID and then the input field. And we'll set this to display block so that it's on its own line away from its label here. That's how it looks inside of the PSD. So you can see it's on its own line. Then we'll add a little bit of margin to the bottom of 20 pixels. And let's apply a border here of 1 pixel. It'll be solid and it's just a light gray color of AAA. Let's also add a little bit of padding to the input field. So we'll put 5 pixels on the top and bottom and then 10 pixels on the left and right. And let's also round the corners. So we'll use border radius and set that to 5 pixels. And we'll just duplicate this a couple of times. One for the Moz border radius and another for the WebKit border radius. And then lastly, for this rule, we'll set the width to 20 pixels. Let's take a look at what that's done. We'll refresh the browser. There we go. Our quantity field looks good. Now let's start to work on our Add to Cart button. Let's first just push away this Add to Wishlist link from it. So let's go into our text editor and let's target the product details ID and then the button tag. And we'll add a bit of margin on the bottom of 10 pixels. And that should push the wishlist link down just a bit. And now let's style the button. So we need the button to look like this. It has the light blue color that we've been using, and then it has this little darker blue box shadow on the bottom. So let's go back into our text editor and let's scroll down to our buttons section. And we can actually just copy the styles from our default button. And let's put them at the bottom here. And let's change its name to secondary cart BTN. Let's first just change the padding. We're going to set this to 10 pixels all around. We'll leave the background color as that light blue color with some white text for the button. We'll leave the border radiuses of 5 pixels. And we'll also leave the box shadow here. Now we don't need the text decoration rule, so we'll just get rid of that. And we do want to remove the border from the button though, so we'll set border to none. And that should be good to style our secondary cart button. Let's save the file and let's take a look in the browser. We'll refresh and there we go. Our button looks pretty nice. Next, we need to style our wishlist link. Let's go back into our text editor and let's scroll back up to our product styles and let's target the product details ID. And if you remember, this is just a link inside of a paragraph, so we can target that link. So we want to target regular links, and we also want to target visited links. Let's set the color of that link to that light blue color that we've been using, 5D AAD0. We'll set the text decoration to none to remove the underline. And we'll set the font size to 12 pixels to make it a little smaller. So let's take a look at that. We'll refresh the browser, and there we go. All right, let's finish up here with the last part, the product info. Let's go back into our text editor, and these styles should actually be right above the product info rules, just to keep them in order. And now if we take a look at our design, you can see that the product info aligns with the top of the product description. And currently, how ours is displaying is it's lining up with the title. So we need to push it down to line it up with the description, and it needs to be pushed over to the right a little bit. So let's go into our text editor, and let's set the margin top to 90 pixels. That should push it down to line it up with the description. And then we'll set the margin left to 40 pixels so that it pushes it over to the right. Let's see what that looks like. We'll refresh. There we go. Much better. Now let's style these paragraph tags. Let's go into our text editor and we can target the product info ID and all of the paragraph tags inside of it. Remember, we have 3 of them here. So we're first just going to set the font weight for all 3 of them to be bold, and then we'll set the font size to be 16 pixels. Now let's work on styling this price box. So we just need to make it a little box with this light gray color and the border on it. Let's go into our text editor and let's target the product info and then the paragraph tag with a class of price. So we want to align the text in the center. Let's use text align center. We'll set the width to 100 pixels. We'll give it a little bit of padding So we'll have 20 pixels all around. Then we need to set the background color. So we can grab the background color with our color picker. There we go. We can see it's F6, F6, F6. Let's paste that in here. And then let's apply a border. It'll be 1 pixel solid. And we'll just use a light gray color of EEE. And let's take a look at that. We'll switch into the browser and refresh. There we go. We can see everything is bold and we have our little price box. Now in the design, the in stock and the product code are not bold. So we need to remove the boldness from those span tags. Let's go back into our text editor and we can target the product info and then the paragraphs with span tags in them. And we're just going to set the font weight to normal. And with that, we are finished with the product page. Let's switch into our browser and see the final changes. We'll refresh, and awesome, it looks really good. So that's it for the HTML and CSS of the product page. I'll see you in the next lesson.